Good evening, and welcome back to tonight's broadcast, A Place for Stories. Tonight's story comes from a listener who says he has spent most of his life hiking remote mountain trails. He's encountered bears, dangerous weather, and countless nights alone in the wilderness. But according to him, none of these experiences prepared him for what happened during a weekend hike in the mountains of Colorado. What began as a peaceful camping trip quickly turned into something he still struggles to explain years later. Something that knew his name, despite having no way of knowing it. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and decide for yourself whether you would have stayed another night on those mountains. This is The Voice Below the Ridge. Hello, tonight's broadcast. I've listened to your channel for a while and finally decided to share something that happened to me 3 years ago while hiking in Colorado. I've spent most of my life hiking mountain trails. I've dealt with bears, mountain lions, blizzards, but none of these things ever scared me as much as what happened during the weekend trip to Black Ridge. I still don't know exactly what was following me, and after what happened on the second day, I'm not sure I want to know. I arrived Friday afternoon. The weather was perfect, clear skies, cool air. The trail was popular enough that I passed several hikers during the first few hours. By sunset, I reached a small clearing where I planned to camp. Nothing seemed unusual until midnight. I woke up because someone was calling my name, Seth, very quietly, almost whispering. I sat upright inside my tent, listening. The voice came again, Seth. The problem was, nobody on that mountain knew my name. I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. I convinced myself that I was dreaming. Then I heard footsteps circling my tent, slowly walking around me. I froze. The footsteps continued for nearly 10 minutes, then stopped. Silence. The next morning, I discovered footprints, bare footprints. No shoes, no socks, just human footprints. The strange thing was that they stopped 10 feet from my tent. There were no tracks leading away, as if whoever made them simply vanished. I should have left. Instead, I continued hiking deeper into the mountains. Around noon, I found an old ranger station, abandoned, boarded up. Most hikers ignored it, but something about it felt wrong. The front door was hanging open, and inside I found old furniture covered in dust, broken windows, rotting paperwork. Then I found a journal, a ranger's journal. Most pages were ruined, but one entry was still readable. It said, "He keeps calling from below the ridge. He knows our names. We never tell him our names." My stomach dropped. I immediately remembered the voice outside my tent. The same voice, the same whisper. Then I heard something outside. A knock. 3 slow knocks. On the wall. I wasn't alone. I looked through the window. Nobody. Then another knock. This time directly behind me, inside the station. I turned and saw muddy footprints appear on the floor, one after another, as if someone invisible was walking towards me. The last footprint appeared only a few feet away, then stopped. I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the trail. But that night, something stood outside my tent, and what I saw through the fabric changed everything. By the time the sun started setting, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't spending another night on that mountain. The footprints, the abandoned ranger station, the voice calling my name. Something was wrong, very wrong. I packed my gear and started back towards the trailhead. I figured if I hiked fast enough, I could reach my truck before dark. About an hour into the hike, I noticed something strange. The trail was empty, not usually by itself. But earlier, I had passed several hikers, families, couples, a group of college students. Now there was nobody. The forest felt abandoned. Then I heard it, a whistle, three short notes, somewhere behind me. I turned around, nothing, just trees. I continued walking. A few minutes later, the whistle came again, closer, much closer. I picked up my pace. The whistling stopped. Then I heard footsteps. Someone was following me. I looked back and finally saw him, a man standing on the trail about 100 yards away. He wasn't hiking, he wasn't carrying gear. He was simply standing there, watching me. I waved, and there was no response. The man remained completely still. I started walking faster. So did he. The distance between us stayed exactly the same for nearly 20 minutes. Then the trail entered a narrow section between two rocky cliffs. When I exited the other side, the man was gone. At first, I felt relieved, but then I noticed something lying in the middle of the trail, a backpack, blue, covered in dirt. I immediately recognized it. It matched the same photograph from one of the missing person flyers posted on the trailhead. The hiker who had disappeared 6 months earlier. The zipper was partly open, and inside I found a wallet, a flashlight, and something else, a folded map. On the map, several locations had been circled in red marker. There were names written beside each circle, 5 names. Four had been crossed out, one wasn't. The final name was mine. I dropped the map, my heart started pounding. This wasn't a prank. Someone had been tracking people on this mountain, and somehow he knew I was here. That's when I heard a branch snap behind me. I turned. The man was standing less than 20 feet away, smiling. The smile wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who knew they had already won. I ran. The next 20 minutes were the most terrifying moments of my life. I could hear him crashing through the woods behind me, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away, but always there, following, hunting. The trail suddenly split. Without thinking, I took the left path, the wrong choice. The trail ended at a steep drop off overlooking a canyon. Dead end. I spun around. The man stepped into the trail. For the first time, I saw his face clearly. Middle aged, dirty beard, sunburned skin, cold eyes. Eyes that had no emotion. In his hand was a hunting knife, not a pocket knife, a large hunting knife, the kind used to skin animals, or worse. He slowly started walking towards me. I backed towards the cliff. There was nowhere to go. Then something happened. A voice shouted from the trees, "Sheriff, drop the weapon." The man froze. Several armed deputies emerged from the forest, weapons drawn. The killer looked around, realizing he was trapped. Then he did something nobody expected. He smiled and stepped backward off the cliff. Gone, just like that. The investigation that followed revealed something horrifying. The man had been living in the mountain for years. Hidden campsites were discovered throughout the area. Investigators connected him to multiple disappearances stretching back more than a decade. Human remains were found buried near several of his camps. The reason deputies were searching that area was because another hiker had reported being followed earlier that day. The same whistle, the same man, the same smile. The killer became known locally as the Ridge Hunter. His body was never recovered from the canyon. Search teams looked for weeks, but nothing. No remains, no clothing, no trace. Most people assumed he died in the fall. I wish I believed that, because 6 months later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was the map I found on the trail, the one with the names, the one deputies had taken as evidence. There was only one difference. My name had been crossed out, and beneath it, someone had written, "Next time." I moved shortly afterward, changed my phone number, changed jobs, tried to move on. But every now and then, usually late at night, I wake up to a sound outside my house. Three short whistles, the exact same whistle I heard on that mountain. And every time I hear it, I make sure all my doors are locked because part of me still wonders if the fall didn't kill him and if somewhere out there, the ridge hunter is still looking for the one that got away. Our second story for tonight comes from a listener in Washington state who thought he was spending a peaceful day hiking one of the most popular trails in his area. What started as a routine 6 mile hike soon turned into a nightmare involving abandoned backpacks and mysterious figures who seemed determined to follow him, and a discovery deep in the forest that still keeps him awake at night. Whether you believe his story or not, one thing is certain. If I had seen what he claims to have seen that day, I never would have returned to those woods. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and join me for another story. This is The Last Hiker on Bear Creek Trail. Hello, tonight's broadcast. My name is Tyler. What I'm about to tell you happened in Washington state. I've never shared this story publicly, mostly because people either laugh or tell me I imagined it. I know what I saw, and I know somebody was out there with me. The question is, who? The trail was supposed to be easy, 6 miles, popular route, 1 day trip. I started hiking around 9 a.m. Everything felt normal. Families, dogs, other hikers. But after lunch, the trail became strangely empty. Too empty. No birds, no insects, no wind, nothing. Then I found a backpack sitting in the middle of the trail. No owner, no identification, nothing, just abandoned. I reported it using my satellite messenger, then continued hiking. An hour later, I found another backpack, different color, different size, also abandoned. Now I was nervous. As evening approached, I noticed someone hiking behind me, far away, maybe 100 yards. Every time I looked back, they stopped. Every single time. I sped up, so did they. I slowed down, so did they. They were matching my pace. The sun began setting. The figure never got closer, never got farther, just remained there, watching. Then darkness arrived, and I finally reached the trail shelter. I locked myself inside. The figure disappeared, or so I thought. Around 2 a.m., I woke up. Someone was scratching the outside wall, slowly, patiently, like they knew I was awake. Then I heard a voice, a man's voice, whispering, "There's something behind the shelter." I froze. The voice sounded terrified, not threatening, terrified. Then I heard running, fast running, footsteps crashing through the woods, followed by a scream, a horrible scream. Then silence. Morning finally arrived. I stepped outside. The person who had been following me was gone. But near the edge of the trees, I found dozens of backpacks, at least 20, all abandoned, all weathered. Some looked years old. Then I saw movement deep in the forest. Someone standing among the trees, watching me. I raised my binoculars and immediately wished I hadn't, because what I saw wasn't a person. It was wearing someone's skin. And when it smiled, I realized it had been waiting for me to notice it. The creature took one step forward, then another, then another. I dropped the binoculars and ran. I never looked back. But sometimes, late at night, I receive GPS location requests from an unknown device. The coordinates always point to Bear Creek Trail. And last week, one of the requests included a photograph of me taken from behind while I was standing in my own backyard. Tonight's final story was submitted by someone who volunteered for a search and rescue team in the mountains of New Mexico. Over the years, he helped locate dozens of missing hikers. Most cases had logical explanations. People got lost, they got injured. Sometimes they simply underestimated how dangerous the wilderness could be. But according to him, one search operation led his team to a place that shouldn't have existed and to a discovery that still has no explanation. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, this is one story that has stayed with me long after reading it. Turn down the lights and get comfortable once again. And join me for tonight's final broadcast. This is The Hikers Who Never Came Down. Hello, tonight's broadcast. I've been a volunteer search and rescue member for nearly 20 years. During that time, I've practiced in dozens of missions throughout New Mexico and part of Colorado. Most of the calls involved missing hikers, stranded campers, or injured climbers. People often ask if I've ever seen anything strange while out in the wilderness. My answer has always been the same: no. At least not until the summer of 2022. Before I continue, I want to make something very clear. I'm not someone who believes every ghost story or paranormal video posted online. I've always considered myself a rational person. If there's a logic explanation for something, that's usually the explanation I accept. That's why what happened during this search still bothers me, because after 4 years, I still can't explain it. The call came in late on a Sunday afternoon. Three college students had failed to return from a hiking trip in a remote section of the mountains. Their families reported them missing after repeated phone calls went unanswered. By the time our team was activated, the sun was already beginning to set. Missing hikers aren't usually where I live. Most are found within a day or two. At the time, I assumed this would be one of those cases. I couldn't have been more wrong. As I had already mentioned, the call came in on a Sunday evening. Three college students had disappeared during a hike. Their vehicle was still parked at the trailhead. We launched a search immediately. The first night, we found nothing. The second night, things became strange. Multiple team members reported seeing flashlights on a distant bridge. Whenever we approached, the lights vanished, then reappeared somewhere else, almost impossible distances away, as if they were teleporting. On the third night, I finally saw them: three lights, moving together, walking single file, exactly like hikers. We followed for nearly 2 hours. Eventually, they led us to an old canyon, a place not shown on modern maps. At the bottom, we found a campsite, completely untouched: old lantern, old sleeping bags, old backpacks, everything preserved. Then we discovered a newspaper clipping inside a backpack, dated 1968. The campsite belonged to three hikers who vanished nearly 60 years earlier, the exact same number as our missing hikers: three. We radioed the discovery. Then one of our team members shouted, standing near the canyon wall. He found names carved into the stone, the name of the missing college students, freshly carved, hours old. Beside them were three older names, the names from 1968. Then we heard footsteps approaching from deeper inside the canyon. Three people emerged, college age, covered in dust, looking confused. The missing students, alive. We rushed towards them. One of them asked, "What year is it?" We thought he was joking. He wasn't. The students insisted they had only been hiking for a few hours. To them, no time had passed. Then they pointed behind us, towards the canyon entrance. Three figures stood there, watching. Three hikers wearing clothing from the 1960s, motionless. The moment our flashlights touched them, they vanished. The students were rescued. Their story never changed. They believed only one afternoon had passed, but there's one detail investigators never explained. When we reviewed drone footage from that night, the camera captured six hikers leaving the canyon, not three. The rescued students and three shadowy figures walking directly behind them. The shadows remained visible for exactly 11 seconds, then disappeared, as if they had finally been allowed to go home, or perhaps had found someone else to take their place. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, be sure to like this video and subscribe to tonight's broadcast for more horror stories, mysteries, and listener submissions. And if you have a story of your own you'd like to share, email me at tonightsbroadcast77@gmail.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and if you're hiking alone and hear footsteps behind you, you might want to make sure they're actually human. Until the shadows call again, good night.